As I usually tell you, Kasoma Faruq of Uganda is putting a caveat on that number. These are the original points. Account for the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy in France by 1793. So we are saying the Bourbon monarchy controlled France for over 500 years. I can say from one king to another in one family. But of course, the year 1793, people rose up in large numbers against the Bourbon monarchy. In 1793, King Louis XVI, who was 39 years, was guillotined. His head was put in the machine. The head was removed. Even Marie Antoinette, who was 38 years, her head was put in the machine. The head was removed. And this led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. So among the key reasons, we have the nature of the ancient regime. It is said the nature of the ancient regime for 500 years was full of dictatorship, corruption, and everything was in the ancient regime. So the nature of the ancient regime made the masses, especially the peasants who were the majority, there were 23 millions, to rise up against the nobles and the clergy who were 2 millions. So the nature of the ancient regime led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy, where peasants who were the majority could not accept such kind of leadership. That's why they rose up against King Louis XVI, and this led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the character of Marie Antoinette. I can say Marie Antoinette's character led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. In this kind of arrangement, Marie Antoinette was a very arrogant woman. Even at a time when things were not moving on well, when the peasants came where Marie was and told Marie, we want the decrease in the price of bread, Marie told them, if bread is expensive, try cakes. So the character of Marie Antoinette, she had 500 maids. These ones were workers working at her home. Moreover, the economy was in crisis. So this character made the masses in France to hate King Louis the 16th. And this explains the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the effect of the American War of Independence. I can say American War of Independence 1776. In this kind of arrangement, Louis XVI made a strategic mistake. He sent French soldiers to go and help the Americans to get their independence. But when they reached there, they realized that the people they were helping, they were even far better than them. Because for them, they had some freedom of worship, freedom of speech, which wasn't in France. So under the leadership of Lafayette, when they came back, they influenced the masses in France to rise up against King Louis XVI. And this led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the death of Count Mirabeau. I can say Mirabeau was the only man who could talk to the revolutionaries and tell them that don't kill the supporters of monarchism. He could tell the supporters of monarchism, don't kill the supporters of the revolution. But of course, his death robbed France of an important citizen. It is said, Mirabeau said on his deathbed, that I carry with me the last rags of the Bourbon monarchy. In other words, if I die today, the monarchy is also going to do what? To die. So the death of Count Mirabeau. When Mirabeau died, by this time, those against the kingship didn't have someone to tell them not to kill and not to mistreat the supporters of the king. It is this that led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the effect of the Catholic Church. It is said the Catholic Church took people's land. It used to put high rent on people occupying the land. So it was a question of the effect of the Catholic Church that annoyed the peasants who were the majority. There were over 23 millions. They rose up in large numbers against the Bourbon monarchy. So it is this that influenced the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Because when the Catholic Church turned against the monarchy, finally this led to the collapse of the monarchy. No, when the Catholic Church was hated by the peasants, it is this that made people to hate the what? The monarchy. Because the peasants were the what? The majority. Since the peasants were the majority, when they rose up against the Catholic Church, this led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the class struggle. People are divided into classes: nobles, clergy, and the peasants. I can say the peasants were 23 millions, the nobles and the clergy 2 millions. But for them, they were celebrating life, and the peasants were meant to cry. So the effect of the Catholic Church led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Because majority of the masses, these were the peasants, were being mistreated. They didn't have freedom of worship. They didn't have freedom of speech. It is this that made them to rise up in large numbers and challenge the monarchy. And this led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the effect of the philosophers. It is said the philosophers, these ones were critical thinkers. Among the most honored ones, we had Voltaire, great thinker. This man could write even in times of sleep. We had Jean-Jacques Rousseau, a man who wrote and said, men are born free, but everywhere they're in chains. Their ideas sharpened people's minds. People are determined to challenge the regime, claiming that by this time, the regime was not giving people freedom. By the way, they based on what the philosophers wrote. By the time the revolution took place, these philosophers were already dead. But their writings impacted the masses, and the masses staged the what? The revolution. Then the nature of the political system. I can say the political system had the nobles and the clergy as the leaders. Other people are not so much honored. The political system had the nobles and the what? The clergy. I can say the nobles and the clergy were dominating politics. The peasants, moreover, some were great middle class, some were highly educated. But for them, the peasants had the problems where I can say they were not considered in leadership. It is this that made the peasants to rise up against the Bourbon monarchy. And this explains the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then we are saying today, by this time, the influence of England. England was under monarchism, but for it had people had freedom of speech, people had freedom of what? Worship. So the influence of England led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy, where I can say that England, as the French were saying, how comes that the people of England, they have a monarchy, but for them they have a constitution, for us we don't have. So it is this that engineered the masses to rise up against the what? The regime. So the influence of what? England. Then the social crisis. We are like saying today, social crisis, whereby at this time people had nothing to eat. People had nothing to eat. Famine attacked people. The main type of food, of course, they were depending at one time bread, but nowhere to be seen by this time. So the social crisis made the masses to challenge the leadership, because a leader is supposed to solve people's what? Problems. But the king was doing nothing. So it is this that led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the economic crisis. I can say what brought the economic crisis was the participation of France in the American War of what? Independence. As France participated in the American War of Independence, problems arose. I can say a lot of money was used to help America get its independence. Helping couldn't be bad. But the problem was one. Citizens in France were suffering. And by this time, the man was busy helping others. So it was the economic crisis that led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. In other words, a monarchy which was so strong finally had to do what? To collapse. Because the masses had to rise up against the regime because of the economic what? Crisis. Then the effect of the reign of terror, 1792 to 94. Let me tell you, reign of terror. This was a situation characterized by high levels of fear, whereby at this time the revolutionaries were killing anybody who was not supporting them. So by this reign of terror made people to hate the monarchy, claiming that the monarchy cannot solve people's what? Problems, because people are dying. By the way, in the reign of terror, you had to kill in order not to be killed. If you saw someone coming, you had to kill that someone before he could kill you. So the effect of the reign of terror made even those supporters of the king to rise up against him. Then the effect of the Allied powers against France. Let me tell you, powers wanted France to be led by a king. Britain, Russia, Prussia joined hands together against France. That's why there was a war between France and the rest of Europe. And this weakened France the more. And when France weakened, it is this that led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. A monarchy which was so strong, a monarchy which had the power, finally had to collapse because of the effect of the Allied powers. Then the effects of the peasants. I can say the peasants were the majority. There were 23 million. So when they rose up in large numbers, it is this that engineered the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Because since they were the majority, they rose up against the regime altogether. And it was a question of time for the regime to do what? To collapse. Then the effect of the French revolutionary ideas, liberty, equality, and fraternity. These ideas were designed by the philosophers, that is Voltaire, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, Montesquieu, among others. These ideas made people to fight for liberty because they were the slogans of the revolution. So the effect of the French revolutionary ideas led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. A monarchy which was so strong finally had to collapse. Then we have the storming of the Bastille prison. Let me tell you, the storming of the Bastille prison. By this time, Bastille prison was a prison where innocent minds had been imprisoned from there. So by this time, when Bastille prison was stormed, the prisoners who were in the prison were released, and it was a symbol of despotism. When it was stormed, it meant that the monarch was coming to an end. Because the general was looking after the prison, his head was removed and it was paraded on the streets of Paris. I can tell you the monarch was collapsing. Then the marching of women to Versailles. The marching of women to Versailles. I can tell you this wasn't a wedding march, but they were marching to take over power. When women marched to Versailles, demanding for the decrease in the price of bread, and Marie told them, if bread is expensive, try cakes. By this time, even those who are not willing to support the revolution had to support, because the queen was very arrogant. So the marching of women to Versailles led to the collapse of the Bourbon monarchy. Then the calling of the Estates General Meeting, 1789. When things were not moving on well, finally the king was advised to call the Estates General Meeting. This was a meeting where I can say problems had to be solved. Grievances of the nobles, clergy had to be identified, even the peasants. But of course, the peasants had more grievances. They didn't have land, they didn't have freedom of worship, freedom of speech. By this time, they disagreed on the seating arrangement. The king told them, you go back, you'll come back tomorrow. We are going to organize the meeting tomorrow, because we are going to paint the building where the meeting is going to take place. By this time, the peasants refused it. They went and sat in the tennis court. They said, we are not going to move from here, except bayonet will make us to move from here. By this time, a revolution had started. I can say when there was the calling of Estates General Meeting, this meant by this time a revolution had